Hey y'all, welcome back to the T podcast. It's James, the HVAC supervisor. I'm here with Jacob today.
Jacob with Virtuous Air Conditioning, owner and operator, known James for a few years now.
Today we have a couple questions, just getting the viewpoint from another contractor's perspective. So I have a number of questions here for you today, man. Can you describe the process and criteria you use when selecting the brand you use, and as far as like what options that you like to present to your homeowners?
So as far as brand, I'm just going to try to offer my customers the best brand that's going to last them long term with the least amount of failures. Just from what I've seen in the field, that's what I'm going to go with when I'm choosing a brand for a customer. Just something that's going to last them a long time. Hopefully they don't have to see me very often. Typically when I'm offering different options, I'm going to ask them what their comfort levels are. Are they worried about humidity? Do they like to keep it super cold in their house? Or are they just worried about efficiency? And we're going to base it off of that. And then I'll have a couple options for them to go off of from there.
Absolutely. So are you brand specific, or you're kind of just going with whatever the customer is really choosing?
My favorite brand is American Standard. Can install any brand, so whatever the customer wants, we can definitely get them those options. I've seen the less failures with American Standard, but all the good brands of Lennox, Train, your Carriers of the world are all good options that we can go with.
Absolutely. So American Standard will be your number one at this time. That's good. As far as routine maintenance, what do you do on your routine maintenance checkups? As far as, the cooling season, especially coming up to this heat wave we're about to get?
So the main things you're going to do just to miss the little problems is, hey, get our drains cleared, make sure our filters are clean, wash those outdoor units. Then we're going to do a bit more of a deep dive where we go in and check all the amp draws of the systems, see if our blowers are leaking oil, motors outside, starting amp draws for the compressor, all the capacitors of the unit, just all the ins and outs of the unit that could cause an issue in those peak season.
Is there anything that you would recommend to like a homeowner to stay on top of? Of course, we're always going to recommend like professional, like have a professional company come out and look at it. Is there anything that you would recommend a homeowner can do on a month-to-month, bi-monthly, whatever case may be?
Right. So if a customer has just a 1-inch pleated filter, I'm going to recommend they change that once a month, especially in the peak seasons. In those fall months where it's kind of mild, they're not running their system long, you can get a little bit more out of them. But when they do that, I recommend they always treat their drain, just so they can prevent little things without having to see us. They never like seeing us. We can take care of them, but it's never a fun experience seeing us. So those are the main things. They can wash the outdoor units, but with that high voltage that outdoor unit has, I typically just say, hey, save that for me for the spring check. I'll do that before we get into cooling season.
Okay. Do you ever, would you ever condone like a homeowner getting into the electrical panel or diagnosing anything on themselves?
No.
Yeah.
High electricity capacitors hold a lot of power. You could easily hurt yourself.
Yeah. In my opinion, it really comes down to like a comfort level of the homeowner. Some homeowners have different backgrounds and things. Like, for example, just the other day, I just replaced a zone board on a system. The homeowner actually had it completely diagnosed for me. Of course, I verified when I got on site. And it was a warranty issue, so he couldn't actually get the warranty to go through. So he had to have a licensed contractor do it. But literally, I walk in and tells me step by step, and I'm like, hey, about to offer him a job.
Those are the unicorn customers. Those are nice, but it's just like you said, if they have that expertise where they can figure something out, I don't have a problem with it. I just don't want them to hurt themselves.
No, 100%. There's some stories I can tell you that I had a homeowner probably a couple years ago. She was in Round Rock, and she replaced her own capacitor. I go out there. She just bought the house maybe 6 months ago. I go out there. The breaker's tripped. It's like 3 years old. It's a Carrier. I'm like, breaker's tripped. Let's check a couple things. And I see this big black mark in the electrical cabinet. She doesn't want to really tell me anything. She just says it's not working. Capacitor's brand new. Checked for, if anything's grounded. Everything's good. I'm like, hey, we're going to turn it on and see what happens. Comes on like a kitten. And I start talking to her more, Turns out she arced it. She arced that capacitor on the wall. And it could have ended very, very south for her if she would have been in contact with that, because that's 240 volts. That's not going to feel good.
Yeah, a couple $100 repair could cost you your life, right?
Yeah, and then I explained everything to her, and she basically said, like, I'm never touching anything again. And I was like, hey, at least or do some more homework on it.
Yep. Don't always trust the DIY YouTubers.
Yeah, but there's so many stories I can tell you of homeowners, getting extremely lucky doing things. Um, Now, especially with everything changing, we've had the refrigerant change recently. What's considered in today's time something that's obsolete as far as an air conditioner goes?
Well, pretty much anything with R22 refrigerant is going to be obsolete at this point. That refrigerant's been phased out since early 2020. You couldn't buy an outdoor unit with R22 since 2016. So when you walk up on one of those that has a failure, it's time to go ahead and start looking into replacement. Those units are very old. With 410A, that refrigerant's going to become obsolete a lot quicker than R22 did because the GWP of it, the global warming potential of it, is going to be changing a lot more rapidly than it did from R22 to 410A. So as we get to that point, it'll be harder to get parts. Refrigerant will be more expensive. So it's just a cost kind of thing when it comes to obsolete on those.
Absolutely. Is it something that you're against doing a repair on an R22 system, or is it just you rather give the homeowner all his options? If they still opt for the repair, you'll go ahead and get the repair done?
Right. I'm always going to offer my customers a repair option. I'm going to tell them my recommendation for where they're at with the system. Putting monies into a system that old that you could transfer to a new system is the better option. But not everybody's always in the option to replace it right then. Of course, we all have financing options to take care of that. But I'm going to do whatever the customer wants me to do. I'm just going to give them my professional opinion on what I think they should do.
Yeah, I completely understand. Since we're on the topic of refrigerants, what have you seen with the new refrigerants as far as availability? I know we have the R454 or R454, and then we have the R32. How's the availability looking like?
So currently, I've had no problem getting it, but that's just there's only one or two suppliers that has it. From when I bought my first bottle to the second bottle 3 weeks later, it had already increased 50% in price. There's already places up north that can't get the refrigerant. People are replacing brand new units that can't cool right because they can't get the refrigerant. So it just seems like the EPA made them roll all these things out way too quickly. So the manufacturers didn't have time to keep up with it. And so it just ends up putting the contractors in a bind, homeowners in a bind, and everything's just so much more expensive because how they made them roll everything out. So it's not a great situation right now.
Especially with that refrigerant. Are you trying to stockpile the refrigerant?
Yes.
Yeah. I know as of right now, I'm only limited to one bottle a week. So I'm trying to get as much as I can.
Getting a bottle a week.
And let me tell you, the jugs do not come with as much as they used to.
Nope.
We're down from 30 pounds with R22. Now we're down to 20 pounds for a jug. And the bottles cost about as much as an R22 bottle that's been phased out for 5 years. Yeah, a lot longer than 5, but definitely. So we're talking about price increases and everything. How are you adjusting, your business standpoint and your strategies to basically respond to all these price increases?
Well, you have to have finance options is the foremost thing. A system where 5 years ago you might be able to find you a $6,000-$7,000 train unit for a base model. You're just not getting that anymore. The equipment's too expensive. So yeah, there's a lot of customers that can, take the upfront cost and pay credit card, pay with check. But we have to have those financing options to be able to take care of customers because there's some options where they just have to replace.
What kind of financing do you have?
I use a fixed APR rate, something like 9.9% at 96 months. If it's more expensive, they can get something around 120 months at that rate. Also, with what we've seen in the last few years is the APRs and everything has gone up. So all the great financing where we were at 5-6 years ago, it's kind of dwindled.
Yeah, let me tell you, I just bought a car about 6 months ago. I wanted to cry walking out of that financing room because of my APR. But definitely, we're definitely looking into the long-term financing. Interest-free is almost non-existent anymore. It's just too expensive. And then the only other thing we're really offering is we have some no-nos for up to 6 months, which after the no, it just defaults, which is a no interest, no payment for up to 6 months. And then it defaults into 120 months at a 9.99. So I think long-term financing is definitely the direction that, a substantial amount of companies have to go to just because of how much interest free or those lower interest free plans cost.
Right. And that's where it's 9.9 still a lot better than putting it on your credit card at this
No,
point.
100%.
So it's like there are much worse options out there than that.
No, I 100% agree with you. Kind of going back to just equipment overall. How has the performance of equipment over the last 10 years changed?
Oh, it's escalated a lot. You know, now it's a lot more based on comfort. Of course,
Mhm.
you have the efficiency side of it. But these new units, what we would call a variable communicating unit, where everything's talking to inside and outside on what speed the indoor blower runs, what speed the compressor runs. You get a lot more comfort out of it, a lot more humidity
Mhm.
control, along with that efficiency boost from the single stage 100% all the time that we're really used to seeing in the industry. Pretty much what typically your builder's going to put on when the home's built. And of course, that's the cheaper option, but people just don't understand how much better their comfort could actually be within their home with the options we have today.
Yeah, with the higher end equipment, the 2 stages, variable speed. Even we're starting to get variable speed in half tons. Side discharge is becoming a big thing. Amana just released their whole new lineup. Mitsubishi has their whole new lineup. Equipment's definitely changing at a rapid rate than I've experienced it over the last 8 or 9 years of my career. Because I do remember, when I first got in this trade, it was, you can go buy a unit, brand new installed, top of the line, not even top of the line, but just a base model for $6 or $7 grand, like nothing. And then the high end equipment was 10 or 11,000, and that was putting in basically the best on the market. And now I'm putting in high end equipment for 20 to 25, depending on what else is needed. As far as with these new efficiency changes and the efficiency changes we've had, as far as the refrigerant changes, it being an A2L refrigerant, have you changed any of your installing processes or any type of safety concerns that you have being a flammable refrigerant?
I haven't, because I was already doing all the proper techniques on the old 410A. I'm clearing out copper lines properly. I'm pumping them down properly, recovering the refrigerant so we don't have any of that refrigerant left in the lines if we have to sweat out a compressor or anything like that. Always braze with nitrogen, so we're keeping those TXVs clean, the expansion valves that regulate our refrigerant flow. Don't get any contaminants in our compressors and our coils that could cause restrictions. So for me, not too much. But this new equipment, it's just like everything that's more efficient. It's a lot more particular. So definitely need to be doing all those practices. And if contractors aren't doing that for their homeowners, they're really doing them a disservice.
No, I completely agree. As far as the refrigerant being flammable, to me and you, it's nothing. It's a flammable refrigerant, but it doesn't change anything. Now, to the homeowner, hearing a flammable refrigerant is going to be in your house, that can cause some definitely tension. My biggest thing is a lot of homes in our area have natural gas or propane ran through the walls. By hands down, that's going to be way more dangerous than my refrigerant.
Right.
But what are you telling your homeowners when they bring up that flammable refrigerant?
Well, it's like I've done some trainings on this refrigerant. They've put in this refrigerant straight to an open flame. It diverts the flame a little bit. If you take the flame away, it goes out.
Yeah.
It's less flammable than your normal hairspray. In these systems, also on the indoor, they install what's called mitigation systems. So if we do have a refrigerant leak on our indoor evaporator coil that, you worry about getting into your airstream, building up and causing some sort of flammable explosion, they have a mitigation system where we cut the system off and run the blower motor inside to relieve the pressure of any of that building up to decrease that chance of happening. So the chances of that happening are almost non-existent.
No, I completely agree. I've seen multiple people online in some training classes that I've been to where they just open the bottle and they put that flame there. The thing about the refrigerant is that it has to have an active fuel source to actually burn. So if you put a fuel source, it'll burn, but the moment you take it away, it's gone. It's not like gasoline. It's not like any other flammable. And I think a misconception a lot of the time is that we have a lot of these refrigerants in hairspray. That's what makes them an aerosol can in your Lysol container, so on and so forth. Anything that you can spray basically has some type of gas in it to help spray it out. Based off of your experiences, what would you say that is a common misconception, like in the trade. So what I mean by that is, what would you say would be the number one thing like a homeowner can do and shouldn't do?
Oh, well, like I said, if there's an issue with the system, a lot of homeowners, you get up there, they've already taken the unit apart, they have a chance of hurting themselves. I don't ever recommend doing that. Just call somebody. I know it's hard to find somebody you can trust all the time. But in our cases, we know they can trust us to actually tell them the honest truth every time. Is just do your routine maintenance of changing your filter, clearing your drain. When it comes to anything, a failure, and you're unsure about it, just give us a call. I don't really want them putting their hands on the equipment, going into the technician settings and changing stuff on our high efficiency stuff, because they're going to cause more problems than they're going to fix in most cases. So that's the main thing, is just call a professional, let us do our job, and we'll take care of you.
How would you recommend a homeowner to? I've known you for a long time. I know you're very good at what you do. I feel like I'm very good at what I do. How would you recommend a homeowner to find someone that they can trust, as far as, hopping online, looking at reviews? Like, what would you say would be their best bet to find someone that they like that's qualified to work on their equipment?
Well, reviews are big. Also, the way a technician talks to you, if they're using scare tactics and all that, then they're probably not the guy you want to go with. Oh, if you don't have a safety switch on this, it's going to flood your house when the drain when the drain clogs. Yeah, that's a possibility, but it's low probability. I do always recommend safeties on your drain, but I'm not going to tell a customer, hey, if you don't do this, your house is going to flood. That's a scare tactic. Oh, you got a leak in your refrigerant, or your compressor's overamping. If you don't do this part right now, your compressor's going to fail. It's just those type of things, those major jumps right there, just to scare them into buying something. I would watch out for anybody that's very pushy, because there's a lot of sales tactics out there today that's just all about pushy. So those are the things I would watch for. Just make sure you're finding somebody that's honest with you, because, when it needs to be sold, we're going to recommend it be sold and all that good stuff. But just the manner of the way they do it and the way they talk.
Absolutely. So if a homeowner has a bad experience, in your opinion, would you reckon that they keep continuing on, or try to find someone new? And how quickly should they find someone new? And the reason I'm asking this question is because I had a homeowner recently. They have one of the bigger names in the town. They've used them for 6 or 7 years. And, it came down to a point where they just couldn't get service. They've been a good customer for them for about 6 or 7 years. And then they gave them a call on a Thursday, and they just couldn't get out for a week. As far as that goes, I know in that situation, it's like, it's hot. It's Texas. We're getting hot. I want service quicker. And then when they finally did get someone out, the experience just wasn't great. Do you think at that point in time they would venture into a different company, or what would you reckon that they do?
Well, I think as just anybody, just if I was in that experience, if I got a weird feeling in my gut about something, hey, you can call a Virtuous, you can call it TotheTHeating. We're going to do free second opinions. Hey, we can come out there and tell you, hey, this guy he wasn't lying to you. Everything's right. And I'll never call a guy previous to me a liar. I mean, sometimes it's ignorance. But a lot of times you do go behind and you're like, yeah, no, I don't know what this guy was talking about. Because everything looks fine, or they were trying to upsell, tell them they need a system right now because it's the age. That is a big thing. Your average life of a unit is 10 to 12. Some say 10 to 15 years. But there's a lot to get out there. And if it's 10 years old and you got dust on your blower wheel, they're going to tell you need to replace it. So if you got a weird feeling in your gut, even if you've been dealing with somebody for a while, just call somebody to get a free second opinion, check those Google reviews, and just get it checked out. See if you can alleviate the issue.
No, definitely. Definitely agree with that. Any experiences that jump out in your head that you want to talk about?
One was actually last week. A guy had been using another large company around here. It's a national company, and been using them for 5 or 6 years on their maintenance. And he's like, oh, I loved them. They changed my water heater too. But this guy came out here and he told me, oh, I've got a leak in the system. It's super dirty. You need to replace it. And, the cheapest unit's going to be $25,000. So I go out there on a free second opinion, check the unit. There was a little biological growth into the inside of the air handler, which we can address. We can put some UV lighting in there, get it cleaned up. which we can alleviate that by adding some UV light, cleaning that up. But the refrigerant levels were perfect. The amp draws were good. There was nothing mechanically wrong with the system. And this guy went out there after being, a customer of theirs for 4 or 5 years was told, hey, you need to replace this unit based on the age. It's 2014 unit.
Yeah.
It's getting there. But at this time, if you want to preventatively replace it, awesome. But there's nothing currently wrong with it.
And you can prolong that a little bit, start planning for it at least, and, getting those stepping stones in place. Man, I had a question for you. Completely lost it. What was the question? Being that 10, 11 year mark, what's typically the repair that is like gonna get you into that replacement? I got a couple different viewpoints on it. Like primarily is it comes to cost of repair versus replacement, because especially like on those Lennoxes, those old Lennoxes, the SL280 furnaces, that blower motor goes out. That blower motor is going to range you from $3,000 to $4,000. And at that point, it's not worth putting that in. So it really comes to cost of repair to that. Do you agree with that? Oh,
100%. Where you say like that $3,000, $4,000, it's definitely swung from where it was, where we were talking about the prices in the industry 5 years ago. If the repair is $1,000 on a 10-year-old unit and it's just a motor, hey, I'm not going to say it's a terrible choice to make that repair. If you've got a failed motor that's going to be $1,000 and we know there's a leak in the refrigerant cycle, at the same time, it's like, okay, we're just putting Band-Aids on it at this point. Let's go ahead and look into replacement, because you're going to have an issue with this refrigerant cycle next year and you're just going to keep pouring money into it. So at that point, I'm going to recommend looking into it. So it's kind of a cost and how many issues are going on with the system.
Yeah, I really think when you get into that refrigerant circuit, though, it's just, you got to do something to fix it, because that's literally just kicking that can down that road every time you add refrigerant to it. And that problem's never going to fix itself. Because you can have a leaking blower motor and that thing runs for another 2 years still,
right?
Miraculously. Amp draws are a little higher, maybe sounds a little bit funnier, but when you live in a home every day, it's just, hey, you become accustomed to noises that you don't even hear anymore, like that fire alarm that keeps beeping.
Right.
But that's about all we have today. Do you have anything else to hit before we end it here?
No, I was just going to kind of go a little further on what you were talking about with the refrigerant cycle. Is just, we put $1,500 here into a system, $2,000 here. Some people think, oh, I'll wait for it to get cheaper. That's one thing we both seen in the industry. Nothing's ever getting cheaper. So, hey, you could have put those monies into a system right now. Because when you do it 2 or 3 years later, you're going to spend a couple extra $1,000 just with what we've seen, especially in the last 5 years. It's never going to save you money waiting. So that's my biggest one on that.
Yeah, I call that digging a hole.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, over the next 5 years, you put about $4,500 into it just to make it last that 4 to 5 years, and then you end up still replacing it substantially more than you were originally quoted for, and then you're still out that original $4 to $5,000 that you put in it to make it last. So just dig yourself a hole. Sometimes it's better just to rip that Band-Aid and keep moving. I think that's about all. We're gonna call it a wrap for the day. Thank you for watching the To The T podcast, and we'll see y'all back here in a couple weeks.